Welcome to my podcast. I am Baruah. This is my guest, Schaubel and Connor Pawliczak. And let's begin.
Let's begin. What are you guys' thoughts on the 23-24 wrestling season?
It went. It happened. It did indeed do that.
I had a good time most days. Most days.
Most days?
No, I mean, I think the days that I didn't, it was just because I was tired.
Yeah, it wasn't like the practice itself.
No, yeah, I mean, I think when I look back, I think this is probably my favorite season of wrestling, maybe ever.
Word?
I know some people describe it as bittersweet. Would you say it's bittersweet, or is it all bitter?
I'd say it's pretty bitter. Thing is, you just kind of have to love the sport to be a wrestler, I think.
That's a good point.
And I don't really love the sport. So, it's all right. It's kind of cool. But
What do you think are the best parts? What do you enjoy the most?
about wrestling,
Yeah.
winning was pretty fun.
I agree.
What about you?
I thought that the team camaraderie this year was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking in the locker room, joking before practice. Those matches were really close. I thought that was a lot of fun. All supporting each other and stuff. I had a lot of fun at practices, wrestling with Brock and Becker and Forbes sometimes.
All right, well, the plan for today is that we've all outlined some of our biggest life lessons, quotes, and honestly anything we want to talk about. And we all have about 5 or 7 of them. We're going to take turns going in a little circle here, starting with Brock, me, Connor, sharing this and having a little conversation. But before we go on with that, how about we do our top 3 moments of the season each?
Okay.
Gonna start?
Putting me on the spot here.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking I would start.
He's gonna be the one.
No, you go first.
Oh, me?
You go first.
Okay. Yeah. Top 3 moments.
So now you're on the spot.
Yeah, there you go.
I would say, in no particular order, the first one that comes to mind was Hightstown.
The match?
Yeah.
Oh, that win?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that was a harsh match for us as a whole, but I do look back on that as one of the most alive days I felt through wrestling. And it was also not only because I won that second match, but because I saw the difference between my first match and the second match so evidently and what actually changed from match to match, right? I think in the first match, I was feeling like shit. I think I ate some shitty food before and I was feeling sick and I had diarrhea and I was sure those were problems. But I know in addition to that, the main problem I had that day was that I was in my head a lot. So I was overthinking not only wrestling related things, but I was thinking a lot about life and I was thinking about other things that same day. And then when I went to wrestle that kid, sure, he was a decent kid, but I know when I walked out of that match, that's probably the worst match I wrestled this year.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know what to do about it, but I went to take a shit. I felt a little bit better after that. But then I stopped thinking as much throughout the day went on. I mean, the shit always helps if you get
Of course.
But I think I did have a mental shift as the day went on. I think as the high sound came and warmed up and the lights were off and the music was playing, I think it made me love the sport more. And I think when I regained that love for the sport, when I went and performed, I feel like it matched that, right? Because sure, it was a win and a loss, but more than that, I felt like I actually pushed myself in that match, right? I felt genuinely tired after each period, but I kept pushing. And I think it taught me at that point for the rest of the season that when I love the sport and when I feel that love for the sport, I perform well.
Yes.
But yeah, that's my number 1. Now you guys are up on the spot.
I can go. In no particular order. I think because you said that the one that stands out for me was my Nottingham match on that day. I was scared the whole 2 weeks before that. I wrestled that kid 2 weeks prior in counties. I was really sick at counties, but I still went anyway. And that kid pinned me in the first period. And immediately, I knew that, oh God, this guy who beat me already by a landslide is coming up. I need to wrestle a good match against him. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't know if I was going to beat him. That wasn't really my goal. I just wanted to walk off the mat knowing that I had done better than I did the first time. And it was really stressful because the whole day I was I think it was DI day too. The whole day I was I need to do this, for myself, for the team. Because I also knew that it would be kind of a close match and the team would need me. And then in the Nottingham match, I saw him, we went out and I looked at him and I was like, you know what, he's just a person. And then I pinned him. How the turns have tabled.
I remember that.
It was a really nice moment for me. I was very proud.
I was surprised when you beat him because I know I was talking to some guys before and I think Devin and I were outlining the rest of the match, who's left, do we have a chance? Oh yeah. the guy pinned Connor, it's kind of over for us. Then you flip the switch. I think that match won us that match, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think it might have. But it was
Great.
it was a really great one.
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
You're up.
All right, well, you guys had some pretty deep, good moments. My favorite moment was after the Friends Central
Oh,
match.
you told the story.
Favorite, one of the top petty moments, of the year. After the Friends Central match, we're going there. I think I have 2 matches. Turns out I get 2 forfeits, and then I get a strawberry milkshake afterwards at Chick-fil-A. That was a top moment.
What's the deep meaning and lesson behind that movement?
I don't know, maybe because
You never know what life's gonna throw your way.
exactly, and you just got to live in the present because I thought I had one thing, and then another thing happened, and I just like enjoyed it.
And you probably wasted so much time stressing about those 2 matches.
That's true. Well, were you stressed? Friend Central?
Dreading them.
Not really. I usually don't like. I usually don't like matches. Like before some of like the earlier matches, like Steiner. I just remember seeing that dude, and I was like shitting bricks in the corner. Am I allowed to swear on the Baruah podcast?
Yeah, you've done it many times.
Oh, okay. Anyways, yeah, but like that's just the one thing I don't like about wrestling, especially because it's like I don't really enjoy. Like I don't have fun during the matches per se, per chance. And then the stress beforehand, just kind of like I don't know. Like, towards the end, I just like stopped worrying. Like I didn't care if I won or lost.
Yeah.
Nice.
That was top petty
Top
moments.
moment.
Top petty moment.
Well, anyways, let's go ahead with our quotes. Do you remember your quote, or you want me to pull up the quote list, the database? I can give you the database.
I think I remember the first quote.
You remember? All right. Start us off.
If I butcher it, you can cut it out.
I'll leave it in.
All right, ready? Oh shit.
I'll get the database.
We're professionals.
Don't worry.
We're professionals.
We got this. There you go.
The more we value things outside of our control, the less control we have.
What does that mean to you?
I don't know. Just like I thought it was cool because I was looking at quotes earlier today, and I saw that one and I was like, that's fire. Because at the end of the day, who cares? Like who wins the Super Bowl or whatever? Because I mean, you can't control that. And then I don't know, just feels like you don't have as much control over your life. Like, why would you? I don't know if I can articulate this well, but like, it's better to feel like you're in control than not being in control. So instead, like, it just shifts your perspective to valuing the things that you have control of versus just like, I don't know, just accepting that things happen to you type thing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think Coach Frank says all the time at practice that like there's so few things in your life that you really can control. And ultimately, like if there's something that you can't control, why should it concern you? You know?
Exactly.
Like if something is just like I took an exam this morning and I walked down, I thought to myself, could I have done anything to make that a better experience for myself? And the answer was genuinely no. Like I studied as much as I was willing to. And whatever the grade is, like, it doesn't matter because that's the work that I put in. And at that point, it's out of my control what the questions were or whatever.
Yep.
And I think it's useful when you want to achieve some outcome, but there are 100 different things you can do to achieve that outcome. Or maybe not even 100 things you can do, but 100 of things you think you can do, right? You start stressing over this factor and that factor and this factor and that factor. And I think what's so powerful is that if you realize that most of the things you're stressing over is like you don't have much control over that outcome, you just focus on the few things you do have control over, it just makes the world less chaotic. And when it's less chaotic, you can deal with it at hand. Like, for example, do you have control over how many followers you get on the podcast? No. But do you have control over how much input you give into it and how much content you release? You do have control over that, right? Do you have control over how much weight you gain in the weight room or how much muscle you put on? No, but you do have control over the fact that you go in this many times, you eat this much food, right? If you just obsess over the inputs and if you drastically increase the inputs, right? Like if I make a statement to myself, like if I go to the gym every day for 2 years and I eat 4,000 calories a day, it's very unlikely that I won't gain weight, right? If I make 1,000 podcasts, it's very unlikely that I won't have at least 1,000 followers. I think making those kind of statements to yourself has given me a lot of peace in my life because then it's like, okay, I can control one thing. Let's just keep controlling that.
Oh yeah, you can only control the likelihood of an outcome, right? Like, and I think Frank says this a lot too with wrestling. Wrestling's on the mind. The idea of like you shouldn't worry what the outcome is. All you can control is your input. You know, how long you're at practice, how hard you work in conditioning, you know, what you do in the weight room in the off season. Like those things are the only things that should concern you because if you do it right, like you said, it increases the likelihood of the outcome that you want. But even if it doesn't, you can hold your head high knowing that you did everything that you could have done and that you wanted to do.
For sure. I think also like when it comes to doing that, it's a lot of work. Like successively, like day after day. So like I was just thinking, like as you guys were talking, like another thing I would say is like to help get rid of stress or whatever. Like you said, when you're like preparing, and like just knowing that you can control your inputs helps deal with like, you know, stress about the unknown or whatever, like whatever's going to happen in the future. If you just like take things one day at a time, like don't worry about maybe, am I going to be still in the gym in 2 years? Just, you know, you're going to the gym tomorrow. I'm going to the gym today. I'll go next week. You know what I'm saying? Like just one day at a time. Don't worry about the stuff that you can't control that's going to come in and affect whatever your schedule is or whatever, because you don't really have, obviously you don't have control of that. So yeah. Cool.
That's
Next one.
fascinating.
I'm up.
Bless you.
It is echoey in here.
It
Did you
is.
say bless you when I coughed?
It's an
It's a
American
beautiful
name.
room.
Canadians would
It's a
understand.
beautiful room.
All right, let's start with this one. This is one of my favorite quotes that I've heard. You've already achieved goals you said would make you happy.
Oh, that's great. Care to elaborate?
Yes.
When I heard that quote, it was like, holy shit. I think it was one of the quotes that like I remember I just wrote down. I heard it like over the summer, I think, but it makes a lot of sense because I think a lot of times when we want happiness, we think that, oh wait, I just need to achieve A, B, C, D, and then I'll get that, right? Like, I feel like maybe there are a certain group of people who are constantly thinking about the next thing they want to achieve, and it's normal, like it's human nature, right? Whether it be like the next goal you set for yourself. But I think having goals you're striving to achieve is a good thing. But we sometimes forget that there were goals we had in the past that we told ourselves that I just need that thing and I'll be happy. And you achieved it and you kind of got used to it, right? Like I remember when I was coming out of COVID, my freshman year was a pretty dark time because I spent COVID not socializing with people in my room all day because literally my parents were like, you're not leaving the house. We're not going anywhere. Wearing masks everywhere when we were able to leave the house. So I wasn't social. My only social life was through video games I played at night with my friends. My sleep schedule was all ruined. I wasn't doing anything productive with my time because I hadn't started lifting till the following summer. So it was a pretty rough time for me overall. And then when I came out of that and I tried to be social again, all of a sudden, like I wasn't able to. And it didn't hit me like, wait, why am I not able to do this when I was able to do it before in middle school? And I basically struggled with that for the whole year. And all I wanted to do was like be able to socialize with people, be comfortable socializing with people, being able to like just have a group of friends that I can say, yeah, these are my people. And I told myself, if I get that one thing, that's all I would ever need. And I remember feeling that I just need that one thing and I'll be so happy. And by the next year, by my sophomore year, I feel like I really achieved that. I think that sophomore spring, I built a group of friends that I was so close to and I aligned so deeply with and connected with. And it was happy. I was happy for a while when I achieved that. And then you kind of get used to it. Right. And now I think I'm a pretty like relatively happy guy now, but there are moments where I'm like, damn, I wish my life was better. I wish I can have more things. I have more things. But this quote shouldn't make you feel as if you shouldn't strive for anything, but it should make you realize that you have achieved things in the past that you should be grateful for. Right. And it kind of puts things in perspective. Like you can continue the train of achieving more things, but I guess take a moment to look at what you've achieved, right? Like look at the flowers along the mountain or whatever the quote is, and appreciating the things that you want in the past and you have achieved. Otherwise, like, what's the point of achieving it? You know?
Yeah. Well, I think like here at Peddie, there's the whole mantra of finish your labors to begin them anew. And this idea of like, great job, you finished your exam. You have one tomorrow. Oh, you finished that one. You have a whole break, but here's some work over that break. Or even like, you had a long practice. We'll go back to your dorm and do homework now. Like it's like there's constantly like another thing to be doing. And I've always kind of tried to embrace that, but kind of had issue with it. which would be interesting to hear your guys' input on that, like this idea of like the difference between like being proud and like being complacent, you know, because I think there's like a fine line there that I kind of try to tightrope walk on. Like this idea of like, sure, like you can look back at like the test that you just took and said, well, I did really well on that. But you have a test tomorrow, and it's like you can't just sit there smiling. You know, you have to go on and do the next thing. And I feel like that's what happens a lot in life, where it's like you had a really great weekend, now you have work on Monday. Or you worked really hard to finish this project, and now you have another one. What do you guys think of that? How would you manage that?
So you're basically saying that the pride we feel for previous accomplishments makes us not want to work hard for the next
Well,
accomplishment.
do you think that that's true necessarily? Sometimes, maybe in general.
Any thoughts?
I think sometimes I can see how that can, you know, it can get like Groundhog Day kind of vibes, like especially at Peddie with all the work and, you know, wake up early, go to school, practice, homework,
Well,
sleep.
not to interrupt, but like you fought really hard to get to the end of wrestling season, right? And even like to the point of your quote, like that was one of your goals, I would imagine, just to make it to the end of the season.
I guess, but I knew I would make it to the end of the season, so I would.
Well, sure, but just like let the time pass
yeah,
to make it here.
yeah.
And now you're on the other side of that. Are you as happy as you thought you would be? Or
Like-
as satisfied?
I mean, I don't really know because all I've really been looking forward to is the break, not necessarily finishing wrestling. I mean, I guess I was looking forward to lacrosse, and lacrosse is pretty fun, but I'm kind of looking forward to break. But I already know, like, kind of to go back. I was thinking about this when you were talking about. I don't even remember what exactly you were talking about.
The story of achieving the social life that I thought would make me happier.
Yeah, and like the goals.
Yeah.
The goals. I was thinking this a while back too, like dreaming about like accomplishing a goal and like about what it would be like to have a goal. Like, I don't know, you want to make 6 figures, dreaming, oh, I can buy this, do this, I'll have a big house. It's gonna be so nice. It'll be so fun. I feel like that's almost better than actually like doing it. Cause like I just like imagining my break,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's gonna be so good. And that's kind of like pushing me. And then I already kind of know that when I get to my break, I'm gonna try to make it as fun as possible. Let's try and make it as much of a break as possible. But I know I can't like live up to my self-made expectations. And I feel like I've done that a lot with a lot of like things, but it's just fun to imagine.
Do you think that's necessarily a bad thing?
I don't think so. I think it's good to dream. But yeah.
So you basically place the expectation for yourself so high, and then you're at Thanksgiving break or winter break, and you're never able to meet that threshold. You feel like, but you make it out to be like this big thing, and when I finally am able to achieve it, I'll feel that sense of reward or fulfillment. But then you're constantly trying to make it that fulfilling, and it doesn't feel as if it reaches that.
Sort of. Yeah. Because I've been interested in like the concept of like time and like perception. So like I've been like trying to plan my breaks to be like, how can I make it feel as long as possible? And then like when I'm at Peddie, like how do I make the semester feel kind of short?
We talked about this,
Yeah.
but I think the problem is that when you try to do that, it makes it worse.
I think
Depends.
sometimes.
Yeah, it depends on how you go about doing it.
Although I agree with you though, that it's like if you don't think about it and just like don't even acknowledge like this is how far percent of the way I am through like the semester or whatever, and like just kind of don't even question that and just do every day, then at some point you'll be like, oh wow, I've come really far. Like where did all the time go?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Well, to your point about kind of like these expectations that you set, like, do you think that like the optimism and hope and joy that you get from imagining how great something is going to be outweighs how disappointing it might be when it doesn't go that way?
Well, I think like I've gotten better at stuff like imagining stuff like just like getting things like when I'm a kid, like I don't know, certain toys, like how fun a new toy is gonna be versus how fun it actually is.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you play with it for like a couple minutes or like a video game, like how much fun the video game is gonna be. And then, you know, you play it a couple hours and then it's kind of boring. But like I feel like I've kind of, you know, got to know myself. So I know like what kind of expectations I'm putting on something and then what the reality is going to be like.
Mhm.
So I can still put the expectations on it and have like the hope and the joy.
But not be as disappointed when it.
But yeah, because I know what it's going to be and I can still just be, but it's better than, like it's still going to be fun,
Mhm.
but I can't let, you know, having high expectations ruin how much fun it
Well,
is.
like, so as an example, do we talk about relationships on this podcast?
Talk about anything.
Sure. Relationships.
It's an open door.
I had this friend and he really liked this girl one time, but he refused to say anything about it. He thought that she liked him back, right? But he refused to say anything because he was
I mean,
worried.
to the girl.
Yeah, say anything
Okay.
to the girl and be like, hey, I feel this way about you. Because he kind of had like an intuition that maybe she felt the same way, but he was scared to say anything because he was worried that her saying no would mean it would be over. And furthermore, that it was more fun to imagine the fact that she liked him back
The illusion.
than him realizing that she didn't. So it's kind of like to your point where it's like he was sitting there and he lived in the illusion and he thought that his life would be better in the illusion than if he were to say something and then the illusion be over. But then again, the longer you go on with the illusion, the longer you hold off saying anything, the second you open your mouth and it's like, wait, this was really an illusion. And now I just spent 2 months with the talking to this girl who doesn't have any like romantic feelings for me, even though I thought she did. Is that disappointment worse than the disappointment of just saying something immediately and getting disappointed there? Or maybe does the 2 months that you spent in this illusion outweigh the disappointment that you feel, you know?
I get your question. I think it's useful to dream. It's useful to paint a beautiful future because it helps you to work towards something,
Mhm.
and you need that. But I disagree that painting a idealized world illusion and living in the illusion is inherently the best way to live.
Mhm.
Because as you said, you'll eventually find out that you're living in an illusion.
Yeah.
You won't be able to live in it forever. And the illusion is never as satisfying as something that's real,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I feel like in moments, um, I felt in my own life, and maybe you guys have felt as well, moments of like genuine joy for maybe a period of time, where usually when you've achieved something you've wanted, right, or you've reached a point of fulfillment through like some other activity, you basically are able to live in the world where you're outside of the illusion, right? Because for so long you've been painted in this world, but you feel like for a temporary period of time you're in it. But I think the problem with the creating illusions is that you eventually find out that it's not real,
Yeah.
right? Whether it be that, I think the example of relationships is perfect, right? You'll find out eventually at some point that you're just lying to yourself.
Mhm.
I think
Have-
it depends on the person, to be honest.
That's true.
And like at the same time, you also like if you just trying to make everything be happy, like you're trying to make everything good in your life, then everything's gonna kind of seem more dull. You know what I'm saying? You know, like the analogy for happiness, it's like acceleration, like you know,
Mhm.
you like ups and downs and stuff. Like if you have
Expand on that?
like I think we talked about this in one of the other podcasts.
Yeah.
Like if you do things that suck, it's gonna make you like appreciate the other stuff more.
Yeah. Happiness is like subjective.
Yeah. And it's like, um, if you're just going along life and you're all kind of like the same way, like the difference between the valleys and the peaks isn't very much. So like you don't really know what to appreciate. Like if you're like a shake and you're like the kid of a shake and you can't appreciate like the good food you have because that's all you've known. You know what I'm saying? But if you go to PFS, then when you go to a great restaurant, you can really appreciate the good food because you've gone down and then you're coming back up. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
So at the same time, like if you have a bit of an illusion and then you realize your illusion's, you know, not true, you get a little bit of that, and then you're like, well, shit, my illusion's not true. And now, you know, do I really want that illusion? Should I like, am I gonna chase after?
Well, but to
and
the
then make it a reality?
to the vice versa of what you're saying, like trying to live in the lows makes the highs feel a lot better,
Right.
but then trying to live in the highs will make the lows feel a lot lower. Right? Like to the point of the illusion, like living in like this like fake fantasy
Yeah.
upwards happiness.
Okay.
Then when you and the longer you're in it, the higher you'll go. But then you'll fall really far. Have you ever, either of you ever read or seen The Great Gatsby?
I actually watched the movie recently.
I also watched
did.
it.
I read it
It's a
in
pretty good movie.
sophomore year.
Yeah,
I just want to be clear before we continue. I don't live in a fantasy world. All right, we can continue. I just want to say that because I feel
I just want to make it clear that I do.
I just felt like that's where this conversation was going. I don't know.
Well, no, The Great Gatsby, the whole point of it is this illusion, right? And kind of this idea of Daisy, you know, he makes his whole life seem big and grand to impress this person.
Mhm.
And ultimately, in the end, he ends up, spoiler alert, he gets killed.
No, you
Because of the illusion, right? And I feel like living in that illusion might send you down the wrong path, right?
Yeah.
And there's a point of no return at some point where you've gone down so far that the second you get disappointed, you like, it's over.
It's kind of like obviously living in an illusion or like a fantasy land that's like considered to be like, that's not great.
Mhm.
You probably shouldn't do that. But at the same time, there's a saying, better to have loved and lost than never loved at all. So like if you were happy in the like just, if you're happy imagining what it could be like, and if you were happy in the process of building up all he had to try and impress Daisy, then is that worth it? And then even though he lost it all at the end, he still had the process.
It's very interesting.
I would love to contribute, but I can't lie. I don't remember anything from The Great Gatsby. And I don't think I actually read it. I think I read the Spark Notes. I'm not gonna lie.
The Great Gatsby is a really good book.
Think so?
Since my last time on the podcast, I've become a very literate person.
Let's see you.
I've read a lot of books.
What a classic.
I've watched 22 movies.
Wow.
I'm trying to watch 100 movies in 2024. And I feel as though I've learned a lot about the world and about love.
Have you ever seen American Beauty?
No,
I'm pretty sure that's,
I'm not literate.
I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Anyways, that was a good movie when I watched it.
Great Gatsby,
Continue.
wonderful. The movie isn't that great, but the book, wonderful.
Okay, I didn't read the book. I just watched the movie. So
Quote.
I basically know the Spark Notes.
Let's see, maybe I can knock off a quote that will send us down a different path.
Yeah, let's switch it up.
Be surprised.
Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
Yeah, I like that one. I think there's a.
It's from the song Beautiful Boy.
Someone's gonna have to explain that to me. I'm not gonna.
So say it again.
Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
What I think it means,
Yeah,
it reminds me of a
explain.
chapter I read in a book. I might be wrong, but I mean, it might be right, but a completely different interpretation of what you think so. I read a book summer going into my junior year. There's a chapter in it titled "Don't Get Lost in Tasks and Duties." Right, so same idea. That I think a lot of people have a tendency to enter this do mode, this
Mhm.
go mode, because as humans, kind of like how dogs enjoy chewing on bones, humans like to chew on hard problems,
Interesting.
right?
Okay.
Like dogs and animals, they all have these primal instincts inside of us. We have primal instincts too. We just like to pretend that they're good ones. But, oh yeah, we're so smart. But yeah, our addiction to building robots and machines and shit, yeah, it's kind of an addiction.
Mhm.
We can't really control it. You can't really stop your mind from thinking. Your mind is just thinking all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only problem, while the do mode is great because you can power through and get tasks done and get your work done. I've been in the do mode when I'm working on some project and like I don't want anyone to talk to me because I'm just getting my work done. You've probably been in similar states maybe once or twice in your life. But the problem with being in the do mode is that it lacks presence. Because if you're so locked into some task and you're so immersed in the activity, a quote in the book says, if you were to die right now, would you even realize it happened? Because you're so locked into something, it would kind of just go by you. Or are you so present and so immersed in the mystery of the universe that that's your last dying moment? And it shouldn't be that we should never be in those zones. And I think it's inevitable that throughout the day you'll find yourself getting work done, getting tasks done, but taking time to just take a break and just be present, right? Whether it be meditating or even just like going on a walk or talking to someone, because talking to people also puts you in more of a present flow state. I think the book strives for telling you that, okay, do your tasks and duties, but take breaks to live in the now and stop making plans for the future. Stop doing all the work that you need to do and be present, be now, because the present moment is all that you really have.
Yeah. I think when I think of the quote, and I agree with you, and I think my interpretation is kind of an extension of that. I think it's a few different things. I think first of all, every good memory that I have from the past like 3, 4 years of my life, probably 3/4 to like 80% of them happened in the moment. Like today, for example, I've been studying for exams, and then we all decided we were going to do this today, and this is a great time. And it's like, you don't ever plan for the most enjoyable parts of your life. And even by extension of that, looking forward in my life, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a surgeon. And when I think about that, I think about being in the OR, being in a hospital. But then sometimes I realize there's going to be so many other aspects of my life. And I think at Peddie, it's hard for us to realize that, this idea that like there's different facets to your life, and it's not just academics and it's not just athletics. There's family, there's friends, there's your job, there's personal passions. And life is what happens to you in the moments between those moments that you plan for. So you plan to go to work and you plan to go to work the next day. But what do you do at night? What do you say to your friends? What do you say to your wife or husband? Or kids, right? Or what plans do you make for the weekend? Kind of, you should place a larger emphasis on not the moments of the monotony, right? Like wrestling practice, for example, it gets monotonous sometimes. So then you think, well, what am I going to do before practice? What am I going to do after practice to make this not just another monotonous wrestling practice, but something worth remembering?
Well, like you were saying about like, you know, it's kind of the spontaneous stuff. And when you live in the present, that's kind of like when you can enjoy it. Back to my, you know, my milkshake after my 2 forfeits.
Exactly.
That's just a perfect example. Planned to have 2 things. Life happened, didn't have 2 matches. Enjoyed the present moment. Got a milkshake. It's pretty good. I don't know if life gets much better. Another top moment was like when, this is gonna sound kind of sad, but like when I got sick and I got locked in the health center, that was also a top moment. That was like,
Coach Frank, don't watch this episode. Don't watch.
that was a tough, because I like, because I had like a fever on the Sunday because we wrestled Lawrenceville and Middle Township.
Yeah.
That was a good match. I was gonna say that was one of my
That was all
that was
good
my
memory.
second,
That was my second as well.
because I lost the dude and then I beat him. Anyways, I shouldn't. Anyways,
Good job.
yeah, thank you. But like, because then I got like a fever on Sunday and Monday, so I didn't like do much work. And then I had a bunch of shit due on on Wednesday. And then on Tuesday, I was like, if I'm still like not feeling better, I'm gonna go to the health center and get it checked out. And it turns out I had a fever. So then, like, it wasn't that bad, but it was just enough. So then they locked me up for 24 hours because it's like, they have to keep you for 24 hours after you're above a certain temperature. So then I just like, I don't know, got my own room, you know, no roommate, my own bathroom. Have you seen the bathroom?
Living the life. The bathroom's
It's
good.
good. It's not.
The,
is the
the one,
best.
the one on the first floor where I am, bro, there was ants the other day. Because
Well,
the mother,
have you seen Avery bathrooms?
no,
There's the showers, they're designed in a way where the water always falls out of the shower. And you're walking puddles everywhere you go. There's 2 toilets that 8 people share, and it's always clogged every other day. It's pretty bad.
okay, that is pretty bad. I don't know.
This is not a pro Petty podcast.
I love Peddie. Peddie's.
I love Petty.
Peddie's good.
You should
What
come.
were you saying?
What was I saying?
K,
Oh, bad.
no bathrooms, no roommate.
It was,
Oh,
you
yeah.
had a great time in the house.
Yeah, because like I wasn't expecting to get locked up in the health center. And then I was like, oh, so relieving. I just get this opportunity to, I don't know, just like spend some time.
Thinking.
Yeah, I guess thinking, just like doing nothing. But I may spend some time not thinking, just doing nothing, you know? Because I guess that was like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Anyways, yeah, that was another top. That's like my 2 top Petty moments. Milkshake, getting locked in the health center.
But what I think is useful about that kind of relates back to the quote, is that you're pulled out of your day-to-day life, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like how we're always making plans. In addition to that, as you said, we're always in the monotonous life. We're always going to class, going to practice, coming back, sleeping, waking up early, rotation. And maybe, I don't know exactly what you enjoyed most about the moment, but one thing that I can hear that seems kind of cool is how you're pulled out of that for a period of time.
Yeah, that's
And you can
my
kind of
opinion.
look back at it like, oh yeah, this is my life. You could see it in third
Time
person.
for reflection.
Right. And whether you're thinking or not, that doesn't really matter. But what matters is that you're pulled out of the monotonous life, which I think is so valuable. Because sometimes you need to take a break, and I think people tend to overplan a lot. I know there are periods in my life where I try to plan everything and plan everything, but things don't always go as planned, right?
Mhm.
A similar quote about presence. I might butcher the story a little bit, but I think there was a Conor McGregor interview where he was going for a second fight or something after he had one fight, and they asked him, "What are you gonna do differently this time?" And he said, I don't know exactly what he said, but what he was his response was related to he's gonna actually be there. Because last time when he was there and the crowd was cheering and they were all, he didn't remember the moment at all because he was so wrapped up in his mind that when he walked out of the moment, he wasn't present and he didn't remember the moment. So this time, the next time he went out, he smiled, he embraced the moment, and he was present in the moment, which allowed him to really enjoy the moment and build it as a memory, right?
That's really good.
Yeah, I kind of ruined the story, but
No,
Have you seen that one TikTok where it's like gossiping with guys and then he said, well, I don't actually know what he said. I don't know. Have you seen that before?
no.
quote from Connor. Actually, this is from Mr. Sham. We remember the way people make us feel, not the things they say.
Word.
Wait, what? Say it again.
We remember the way people make us feel,
Oh.
not the things they
I
say.
remember talking to people like, I don't know, I feel like it was like elementary school. But it was like people would be like pissed about something. I'm like, well, what happened? What'd they say? I don't even know what they said. Just
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, do you remember when at counties you and I had 3 hours together?
Mhm.
I was sick. We just sat
You're always
there.
sick.
Well, it was the same.
That's
thing.
also
Oh,
why-
same.
that
Like
might
a
be one of the
school-
reasons why you lost to the one dude because you were
Yeah.
sick and
Oh,
weren't
good.
feeling well. Reaction
Yeah.
times were slower.
Yeah.
Especially on like a fight.
Yeah. Anyway, we had a really nice long conversation for like 2 hours. And looking back, I remember bits and pieces of what we said.
I don't remember any of it.
Well, you probably remember how you felt.
I remember exactly how I felt. I remember sitting there relaxed. I was a little anxious about the match coming up, but ultimately, I was just having a really great time with you. And I feel like when I look back to the past 3 years of my high school career, I could probably, I mean, there's a few quotes on here that I remember just because they stood out. But in general, I couldn't tell you half the conversations I've had with the people who I respect the most, what they say, right? But I remember exactly how I felt walking away from that conversation and how I approached my life after that conversation and how they altered that with whatever they said, but more importantly, with the way that they made me feel about a situation. Or just
Well,
them.
yeah, along similar lines. This is kind of related, but I was reading about memory and how our brain decides what to remember, what not to remember. And you remember memories more clearly when they were more emotional, right? So if you had a really emotional moment, whether it be you're extremely happy or you're extremely sad or you're extremely angry, you remember those memories more vividly, right? Because you look back at your past, you probably forgot a lot of your childhood, right? There's probably so many moments in childhood that if I gave you a random day and a random year, like what were you doing on October 8th in 2012, you probably wouldn't remember. But there are select moments that you remember very clearly, right? Very select moments. And those are probably the most extremely emotional moments for you at the time, which is why it's stuck in your memory. But yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I also think that, like, I have nothing to say.
You know what's interesting?
What?
This is like, it's kind of related, kind of completely unrelated. It's just an interesting thing that I thought I'd share. You can cut it out if you want. But I was watching like brain games.
Oh, I love brain games.
I was watching a brain games thing. Okay, it's like a show and it's like just talks about like your mind and like how you perceive the world, but how, you perceive the world, but it's wrong sometimes or a lot of the
yeah.
time. There was this one thing where they basically like they posed a crime, they just like in the middle of a park, they just had someone run up and steal someone's purse, like a fake, like they were both actors, so not like a real
Wait, so
person's
the-
purse.
Oh, it's like
And then they had the witnesses, and they like were interviewing the witnesses, and it was like they were talking. The whole point was that you don't really remember things as clearly as you think you do, because they made a point about the color of the coat, and like no one really knew what the color of the coat was, and then they had two people who were like certain that it was like white or something, even though it was brown, and then everyone else seemed to like remember it being white, even though it was never white. Anyways, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
That
it reminds me
sort
of
connects maybe.
um I think we did this in math class with Mr. Dom on the first day of school, where he was telling a story with a bunch of lefts and rights. Into the story, right? So the family, like their names are like his name is John Left and his name is Max Wright. And he would tell the story like John left the house and he said hi to Mr. Wright. Like he made this whole story with lefts and rights, right? And we're all holding an object in a circle. And every time he says left, you have to move your object to the left. Every
Oh,
time he
that's
says
really
right,
cool.
move the object to the right, right? And he tells this whole story. And then we finish, and then he asks us details about the story. And nobody remembers anything from the story because we're so focused on what we're supposed to be paying attention to with like moving the objects which way you want to move them. But I guess it goes into the fact that our brain, it picks and chooses what it wants to remember.
We
right?
can't multitask.
Because the amount of visual stimuli, the amount of auditory stimuli, the amount of stimulus in your environment, it's so high that it's impossible for your brain to process it all at once. Like I can't walk away from this room fully taking everything in,
Mhm.
which is why my brain will choose bits and pieces of it to remember and walk away with, which can also in your example, right? Maybe the witnesses are so paying attention to the fact that someone's getting their purse stolen. They might be feeling feelings of anger. They might be paying attention to who is this guy, and they might have previous stories in their mind with similar experiences that their brain has been trained to remember. Which, like maybe the people with the white coat, like they remember someone with the white coat stealing something from them in the past, which is why their brain has been developed to learn about from that memory for future reference, right? Um, yeah, there's so much stimuli in your environment. The brain picks and chooses like what it wants to remember.
Yeah.
Well,
I was just say another brain games fact. The brain runs off like 4 watts of energy, which is less than like the lights in here.
Really?
Yeah. So the fact that we can do any like perceive any of this is kind of crazy, you know.
to tie back what you just said to the original or to the quote that we talked about before,
Right,
I say,
right.
well,
Oh yeah,
I'll
the
get
plants.
I guess it must not have made you feel anything. Um,
No motion.
about how like I said like again, I'm so sorry. About how you are so overstimulated by things that it's so hard to pick and choose what to take in. Back to the idea of presence and like being present. It's so hard as you move through your day-to-day life to really acknowledge the factors that make you really happy or make you upset or make you stressed. But being more conscious of that and the things that overstimulate you and the things that make you feel good allow you to be more present and basically say, I'm going to approach this day. And even though I have a math test and I'm worried about that, or I don't want to go to practice, I have history class and I can't wait for that. So allow me to think about that and have that be the main focus of my day.
Something else I started doing recently was at the end of the day, I just think about the best moments of the day. And just taking an extra 5 seconds to think about the moment actually shows you like, holy shit, I did all these things in this one day.
Mhm.
And sometimes when I look at a week ago, like what today is Wednesday, right? I was in the wrestling room a week ago, but it feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
Like low key, doesn't it feel like wrestling was a while ago?
It
Just a
does.
week ago.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember even 2 days after the season over, it felt like so long. I was like, oh wait, I was already in the room 2 days ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of forgot how was I connecting that back? The idea that taking time at the end of the day to think about the best memories of the day, think about things you're grateful for, it just trains your mind to be more positive as well.
To that point, whenever me and my friends go out for like, we go to the diner minutes or even we're on the phone at night, we'll always play this game called Rosebud Thorn. I don't know if you guys have
We
ever
did that
heard
in
of it.
Mr. Tali's class.
Where basically you say, I don't know what's what, but probably the thorn is what was the worst
Negative.
part of your day, your week, your term? Because we went just yesterday, so we talked about the whole term, the worst part of the term. And then you talk what was the best part of the term. So you'll have a nice little positive conversation.
Mhm.
And then you talk about what you're looking forward to for break or the next term. So kind of it's like bad things happen, we'll push that aside. Good things happen, we'll acknowledge it, but then we'll push it to the side. And then let's look forward to kind of like bottle end everything that's happened and place emphasis on sure, bad things happen, but also good things happen. And it's always a lot easier for us to say the bad things that happen, which is kind of interesting. But some days it's a lot easier to talk about the good things that happen. We'll even go along and say like, oh, this happened, that happened, it was all great. But then other days it'll be like this bad thing happened, this bad thing happened, that bad thing happened. But kind of being aware of the fact that not every day is a good day or a bad day. Living in that gray area, it's not black or white. Bad things happen, good things happen, and that's true throughout life. The fact that you can lose your job, but then still have a family to come home to, right? So aspects of your life can be really bad, but other aspects can be exactly what you want them to be.
There was a Oprah Winfrey quote. I don't think it's on there, but I read it.
It's gonna
And
be
it was it's kind of like
I love
connecting to these things, these ideas. And it's like, if you focus on the things that you have, it seems like you have a lot. But if you focus on the things that you don't have, it seems like you're like missing a lot or you don't have anything. And it's like the same kind of thing. You focus on like the good parts of the day, feels like, oh,
That's
this was
pretty
pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But if you focus on maybe the bad parts or how the day could have been better, it's like,
You're always
you're,
unsatisfied.
yeah,
Like,
you're looking at it, they're looking at it from like a glass
Glass
half
half full,
empty.
glass
Yeah.
half empty, yeah.
That
Alright,
kind of
bro.
idea. Like technically it's the same either way, but it's just how you look at it.
There you go.
We should call this the quote-tastic episode.
I like it.
Quote-tastic,
That's new word.
new word.
The most beautiful things cannot be seen or heard, only felt in the heart. You know who said that?
Oh, for
Helen
real.
Keller. I thought I'd add that. That was pretty.
So what does it mean to you?
To me, it means that you gotta feel it in the heart.
Elaborate.
Maybe perhaps the emotions. You gotta. It's not just about like the stuff you see or hear or whatever.
Feel in the heart. Yeah.
You gotta feel. It's the emotions. Like you only remember the stuff that you have an emotional attachment to. You don't.
I don't know if I get the quote.
I got it.
I thought it was just
You just doing it because it's funny.
Yeah, I thought it was just funny.
I think it's like, there's the observable world and then there's the non-observable world, right?
Okay.
So, for example, you walk in this chapel, it's big, the red carpet, it's tall, there's the lights, the religious symbols back there. There's all these things that you can observe and see and hear and maybe even touch. But the thing that is ultimately more important and the beautiful things is rather the way everything makes you feel and the experience that you extrapolate from the physical world. So for example, like I said, I'm trying to watch 100 movies this year. My goal is not to watch 100 movies just to say I watched 100 movies. And the reason why I enjoy watching movies isn't to say that I've enjoyed watching movies, it's to feel things. And ultimately, I feel like that's our job as human beings, to experience the observable world and extrapolate emotion from it.
When you say that our primary goal should be to feel things, I think the more we want to think about it, because I know we've been talking about it for a while, but I think the idea of feeling things is kind of vague, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does it really mean? And how do you think you define that?
I think being changed by it, whether that be emotional change, whether that be a change in mindset, whether that be a change in action, but ultimately anything that you can witness or observe or sense that will alter the way that you feel, think, do things moving forward. That's how I would interpret feeling.
That's interesting, because I think one of the challenges with feeling is that some things feel good, but they're not good for you.
Yes.
And some things don't feel so good, but they're good for you in the long run, right?
But anything that doesn't feel good, that feels good, that isn't good for you, ultimately won't feel good.
Yeah, but it's hard because the thing about the addiction and any type of addiction is that it gives you a false sense of pleasure now, which turns into pain, but you always forget that there's also pain involved in it, and that you always fall for the pleasure. Which is why I think we should be careful with some things that feel good, right? I think we should use our knowledge from the past, right? Like, do we know whether this is good for us or not, right? And I think sometimes you don't know exactly like whether something is good for you or not, but you need to, I guess, try out things and learn for yourself.
Well, but I would also say that just because something feels bad doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Like, I watch movies and I read books that make me want to cry. Like,
Well, that's not necessarily a bad feeling.
well, but that's what I'm saying. How could you say any feeling is a bad feeling?
I think when it comes to like what you were saying with things that feel good but that perhaps aren't good, kind of goes to like delayed satisfaction type
Delayed
stuff.
Satisfaction.
gratification.
That's the one. Delayed gratification. Because like
Satisfaction.
because at the end of the day, everyone's goal mostly is to be happy, probably, I imagine. And some people probably will never be happy. Like, and I don't mean like the depressed people. I mean like people like Elon Musk, who just can never be satisfied. Like they're always going for more type thing. Those people will never probably be happy. But like, if you're sat on your couch thinking, oh, my life sucks, I'll never be happy, it's probably because you do the stuff that makes you feel good in the moment and not like the delayed gratification or like,
Gratification. All right, shall we move on?
Am I up?
This is a life lesson. It's not really a quote I've heard from anyone, but something I've reflected on recently. 99% of your problems are in your mind. Your brain creates all the suffering.
that was like one of the quotes that I saw from like Confucius. It was like,
Confucius. Is that how he said?
I have no
Yeah, it's
idea,
Confucius. I think
Okay.
so.
but it was like, life is really simple. We just make it really complicated. Kind of, I feel like kind of
That's so
similar.
true.
I think if you feel anxious or you feel sad or you feel really shitty or you feel scared or you feel any negative emotion, if you look around right now, is there anything wrong right now? Nothing's wrong right now.
That light is out.
That doesn't really matter.
I've been looking at it the whole time.
That one's out too, actually.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
I think that's a good problem to have. It gives the room better lighting.
How many podcasts does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know. We'll get there at some point. What's I saying?
I'm sorry. I look around and everything is fine.
Yeah, if you look around at this present moment, nothing's wrong right now. But your brain thinks any problem that you have is generally a problem from the past or the future. That's something coming up that you're scared about, but there's something in the past that you're worried about. And I'd argue that when you're have a problem right now, your brain is so busy dealing with it that it doesn't create much suffering, right? Like you're in a wrestling practice. I feel like you suffer more in the hours leading to the practice than actually
Yeah.
at practice, right? That you're thinking, oh my God, it's gonna be so bad, it's gonna suck, it's gonna suck. When you're actually there present, like doing the hard thing, sure, it's like physically difficult, but it's not like mentally difficult. It's not like you're feeling anxious or depressed or anything. When you can't. Like I usually, for me, I feel pretty good during practice, right? Even though I'm physically tired, I feel like it gives my mind a rest. But usually the problem comes we're traumatized from something in the past. That we keep thinking about the thing that we said that was so embarrassing, or for example, or we're so anxious about something coming up. I feel as if there's no problem in the right now, and all the problems we create are just narratives we're telling ourselves in the mind that are just not true.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you think about it, like we're all at Peddie, so we're all like hyping up like, college and whatever, but it doesn't really matter.
I think that's a really great point.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole other conversation.
Like, especially for someone like me who's here for football, like at the same time, it doesn't really matter if I go to college for football or not.
Well, I also think one thing to think about is like, I don't know if we had this conversation last time I was on, so I'm going to bring it up. And if we talked about it, you could probably cut it out. But I don't know where your parents went to college. I don't know where your parents went to college. Neither of you know where my parents went to college.
Mhm.
I don't know what either of your parents do for a living. You probably don't know what either of my parents do for a living. And yet the three of us are sitting around this table right now. So ultimately, it doesn't matter where you go to college, and it doesn't matter what profession you pursue, which also means that it entirely matters the way that you feel about what you're doing.
Mhm.
And we kind of talked about this a little bit. The idea of people will jump into colleges they don't care for, but just for the name.
Right.
And people will jump into occupations they don't care for just for the name and just for the number of zeros that are going to come after whatever number, right? But ultimately, you will end up in the same exact place. Even if you end up in a different place than the place that you would have if you pursued your passion, the passionate road is always the one where you'll find the most happiness. Because that passionate road can lead you to just as much success as if you were to take that high road of doing things you don't want to do. And I think to your point about college, I made a point with myself, I think halfway through last year, that I refuse to do anything that I don't want to do or I'm not passionate in order to fill out an extracurricular sheet or in order to get better grades or take a harder class. Like I refuse to be a cog in the system and dedicate my high school experience towards going to some school just for the name. I don't even know what college I want to go to, and I'm assuming that you probably don't even know what college you want to go to. But what you should take into account is the fact that it doesn't matter what it's called, right? Because I don't know what college your parents went to, and you right now are in the same place that I am.
I think one caveat. I agree with most of what you said with the piece that where you and ultimately end up going doesn't matter. But I just think that for anyone who's listening, it shouldn't be an excuse to just not do any work at all. Right?
That's what I was thinking. I
Like,
was,
just saying, oh yeah, school doesn't matter. I'm just gonna go party and shit. Like obviously that's probably not that's more of the instant gratification stuff, right? That you
yeah,
but I think that's not the point that Connor's making. Right? I think the
Mhm.
point that Connor's making is that you do the effort, you put in the work, but the outcome you can't control it, right? Back to the first one, right?
On the contrary, though, I would say, let's say you do just want to party throughout high school and you do just want to get a low-level job and have a nice family, right?
Well, that's true.
I mean, if that's what you
Well,
want,
and that's what I'm saying, if that's what you want, and I feel like, especially here at Peddie, but just in general, a lot of people define success as your contributions to the world, right?
Mhm.
And I don't think that's necessarily true. Like you can live a very humble, quiet life. You know, I don't even know any examples because it would feel rude to use an example, but like of just sure not having the highest paying job, right? Maybe some people don't even go to college, and that's fine because ultimately, as long as they're doing what they're doing, they will be more successful than your Elon Musks and your doctors who don't want to be doctors.
I think it depends on how you look at it. If you want to, have the experience of, going to a bunch of parties in high school and then you don't mind living like a mediocre job. Maybe you went to a low level college for some weird major, and I don't know, you have a nice little family and you guys are just chilling, nice little humble life. If that's what you want and you want the experience, I think, and that's what you're passionate about, that's chill. That's calm.
And you have
You'll
passion
get
for
there.
it.
But I don't know.
You
But
know,
I'll like if your passion like is something else, like and you know that you're not going to be happy with a McDonald's job in the future, like you can't sacrifice that for going to a bunch of parties in high
Well, but
school.
I think the point that I made
drinking and-
works both ways of going down a path that's harder.
Mhm.
Because that's what society's telling you to do, as opposed to the path that you're passionate. Some people go in the opposite direction and go in a path that's easier because that's what society's telling them to do. To go to these parties and have these instant gratifications, right? Gratifications. Gratifications that later don't even mean anything, right? Because I would say that all those people who are going to those parties have other passions that they're not willing to explore
That's what I'm thinking.
because they're afraid of what people will think if they say, I actually like math, or I actually want to go read a book, as opposed to drinking and doing drugs every weekend, right?
well, I don't want to paint it as an inherently bad thing. I feel like what we've done is that we've created two extremes,
Yes.
right? That you'd go to a party, you're gonna work at McDonald's. Like that's probably not true, right? I think I've come to realize that I've been pretty big on being against instant gratification for the last year of my life. Like pretty on the extreme side of things. And I think we've had some conversations in the past about some of the things I've done, like quitting music, like never partying, never drinking. I think I've come around to think that sometimes having those life experiences is okay if you genuinely enjoy it,
Mhm.
right? And I think that you don't, in terms of passion, I believe that we all have some sort of internal passion, but even if we're working on something and achieving something that gives us fulfillment,
Mhm.
right? And I think for so long, when I realized that I want to work a job that I'm passionate about, so I want to say screw you to all the school stuff, and I only want to do what I'm passionate about. If I take a step back and try to enjoy the work I'm doing at school, you can enjoy that too. And I think the way we're wired, we work on any task, we can feel enjoyment through that.
That's true.
And what I think is I created such a negative world where I had to do what I'm passionate about to be happy.
Mhm.
But I believe now that you can find great gratitude anywhere you are.
That's a really good point. I really
Like
do. I believe that.
Like you can be working a job that like let's say you have these desires to work on something you're passionate about. You're kind of stuck in a job that you don't have much control over. I feel like your happiness level is not going to be determined by the job you get. It's going to be determined by your ability to find gratitude through that work,
Mhm.
right? You can be working a software job and find gratitude there. You could be a YouTuber and find gratitude there. And again, that's not an excuse not to do what you're passionate about, right? Find ways to do it and make it happen. But that's not an excuse for saying that I'm going to sacrifice my happiness for tomorrow.
Mhm.
Because you can enjoy, like I think schoolwork is the best example because I painted schoolwork as an inherently negative thing for so long. Because I told myself that work has to be something I'm passionate about. And I'm forced to do all the stuff that I'm not passionate about. But then if I force myself to enjoy the work, like it's enjoyable. It's all about I think it goes back to the quote I said before that everything is mental. And you can kind of reprogram your mind to enjoy anything.
Well, yeah, I do think that if you look hard enough in any situation, you can find a silver lining and you can find a reason to keep doing it. like even with football for me, and I'm sure it's the same with wrestling for you. It's like in order to get through these 2, 3, 4 month seasons of just hard work every day and doing stuff that you don't enjoy and aren't passionate at all, there will be some aspect of that that you can hold on to. For example, for me, it was people like you, Brock, that I could talk to at practice every day because I really do enjoy socializing, believe it or not. And talking to Coach Evan and asking him about like his life and asking people where they're from and getting to know the people around me. So it isn't just about the football, it's about the thing that I'm passionate in through football, right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Honestly, low key, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if it makes it more enjoyable. But, yeah, when it comes to we're talking about the passions, I was trying to
Did it die?
I don't think so. I think it overheated.
overheated.
It's done that before. Does it feel hot?
It is very.
Word.
Are we taking a halftime?
All right, halftime. What was your thought? I just see you can move it down a few more.
I kind of want to say it because I feel like I'm never gonna be able to say it again.
Go ahead.
All right, ready?
We're around here.
I was just trying to summarize it in my head. You can cut this out, no problem, because this is gonna be terrible. I'm not very good at explaining things. But I was thinking when it comes to like doing the thing you're passionate about, it's like you and your podcast, for example.
Yeah.
You're passionate about the podcast and you like making podcasts.
Yeah.
And that's all good and fun.
Yeah.
But I imagine like you're not sacrificing a future in that
Yeah.
by doing like listening to the music or playing TikToks that make you feel good instantly. I don't know.
I know what you mean.
I-
Did it stop recording?
But it makes more sense in my head than I can explain it. I'm not very good at explaining things.
Okay, I'm gonna take this out for a few minutes and let it cool down. Okay.
Take it outside.
Yeah.
Tell me he was back today.
Oh yeah, he did post on the remind.
All right, well, Connor, you're gonna ask us a question before we departed.
Oh, that's right.
Wait, can we do a halftime show first?
We'll do the halftime show at the end.
Okay.
I'll listen to it right now.
I don't know.
It's not really a halftime show if we do it at the end, is it?
Well,
he
I'll
can
put it
put
out
it
better
into
than
the-
I'm
Oh,
creative like that. But let's do it right now. What do you guys want to do?
You're the one who want to do a halftime show.
Connor, what you got? Do some singing? Are you a good singer?
Let's do a TikTok dance
I mean,
for
if you
us.
insist.
Take the mic. That's right.
No, we're gonna play trivia.
Okay.
I'm not-
U.S. history. Did you take A push last year?
Take a mic.
You took reg. We're gonna do.
Take a mic.
We're gonna.
took reg.
I had my A push exam this morning. I'm putting this back. I had my A push exam this morning. I'll do some U.S. history.
Well, yeah, the 8-push student is gonna quiz it.
First person to slap the desk gets the question. Gets to answer the question.
Okay.
Put your hands on your head. Ready? In what year did the Civil War end?
1865.
That is correct.
No way.
One
Well, he
point.
has the advantage because he's singing. I'll dabble.
I'm Canadian too, though.
That's true.
This is the first year I've ever taken U.S. history.
Following World War I, President Woodrow Wilson proposed an idea for how to ensure world peace. It was a group. What was their name?
What's the word for no alcohol?
Prohibition.
Ovation.
That's not correct.
I don't know. I just guessed.
Like, what does that have to do with anything?
I have no idea.
No,
New-
the answer
New
was
Deal
the
Coalition.
League of Nations.
I would have never got that. So I
You
just
know-
threw it
I
again.
know what it is.
Which president came before Obama?
Clinton.
Incorrect.
Reagan.
Incorrect.
Wait, what?
Oh, what's his name?
Oh, what's his name?
Wait,
Wait.
Bush.
There you go. George.
Oh, yeah.
That's who it was.
George.
I knew. It
Well,
was
that one I should have
Republican.
known. Think of so.
Yeah, you should have known that one.
I knew it was Republican. How do I know that? What?
Shut up, dude. I don't know anything with the US.
Who was the first Republican president?
George Washington.
Incorrect.
Quincy Adams.
Lincoln.
Who was
Really?
the first one?
Everyone
Really?
else was Democratic or
Everyone
something
else
else.
was-
Well, because the party switched.
Everyone else
at
was
that time.
Democratic, Republican, Federalist, or Whig.
Oh, yeah, wait.
Whigs.
Okay, I think we're getting too off topic.
Anyway, that has been A Push Trivia. Join us next week for nothing.
Okay. Okay.
A little bit of a boring intermission. I think we should stick to the you and Brock.
It's like a game show.
It's a game show.
We could play my math Jeopardy.
No,
The
I
math
think,
Jeopardy.
I think we're okay.
No, that would suck.
Connor, what was the question you're gonna ask?
As human beings, what is our ultimate purpose?
Fuck, bro. It's a Wednesday. It's a Wednesday.
I thought it was Tuesday. It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
I'm gonna let Shari go first.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
What
Thank
is
you.
our ultimate purpose?
Yeah, and then I'll go last.
Well, I guess the first question that comes to mind is, do we have an ultimate purpose? Right? And there is a large cohort of people who believe we don't have an ultimate purpose and that life is
Do you
is
fit into that
meaningless.
cohort?
I don't. I think there is meaning in life. I think there's too much of a coincidence for there not to be meaning, right? And I know there's the absurdism, people will say that, oh, it doesn't have any meaning, it's just randomness. But I do think that we're on this earth for a bigger purpose. And on the Brock podcast, I gave the analogy of why I believe there's something bigger than us, right? Because sometimes people say that there's a God, there isn't a God. First of all, I don't like the word God a lot because I think it's overused and misused by people who don't even know what it means, right? But if we just think about a higher,
Yes.
Brock, no camera facing at you anymore.
That's calm. I'll just
Got that one.
We can just use that.
Yeah. I'll give the analogy again because I kind of like it, but imagine you had bacteria living in your stomach, right? These bacteria were intelligent bacteria, right? These in your microbiome, whatever. And these intelligent bacteria figured out that they're living in something called a stomach. And more than that, through scientific discoveries, they find out that they're living in something called the human body. And like, wow, we figured everything out, guys. There's more organs in the body. There's different features. There's different types of bacteria. We figured it out. We're so intelligent. And I think us as humans are similar in that we figured out we live on this earth. We figured out that this earth is within a whole universe. But I think that's a limit to something that's beyond that because you can't explain to a microbiome, you can't explain to a bacteria something beyond the human body, right? Like if you showed this intelligent bacteria this chapel room, it wouldn't be able to comprehend it based on the knowledge it has. And I think because of that, there is something bigger than us, right? Now that raises the question, does that necessarily mean there is meaning? Which I don't know if it does that, but what I do know is that it gives us hope that there might be something that we don't understand, right? Going off of that, what is our ultimate purpose? As a human being myself, it's hard for us to define what that is because we live a life where we're constantly striving to make meaning out of things. And I do believe our desire to create meaning is something that's inherently in us at the human level, right? Which is why humans are so attracted to stories and religions and things like that because they're striving to justify their existence on this world and make meaning out of it. But I think something I was reading it recently, which since I was reading recently, I guess we can tie that into today's conversation, that people tend to identify with their mind, right? They tend to identify with the thoughts in their mind. They tend to identify with the ego, which is basically what the mind thinks of itself, right? Because if you think about yourself as a person, you probably attribute it to an identity, which is a culmination of all the experiences you've had and all the conditioning you've been through and all the things that have molded you into becoming Connor Pawliczak or Brock Schaubel, right? And your mind keeps telling yourself stories to place yourself in that reality in an effort to make you feel as if that there's something to work with here, there's some ego. But the truth is the identity that your mind creates of you is not actually you, it's just mental activity. And I think through meditation and I think through what Buddhist cultures talk about of separating yourself from that ego self and finding the peace that lies from deleting mental activity, I guess I've never experienced it, but what makes sense to me based on books I've read from people that are more spiritual, there is something that's beyond the mental activity. And I think it's our purpose to align with that before we leave the earth.
That's fascinating.
Can you repeat your question? Like what? Oh,
And as human beings,
Do we have purpose or what is our purpose?
if any, is our ultimate purpose?
do you mean like as a species or like?
I think that's an
individually?
interesting interpretation.
Okay.
I think as a species, as an individual,
Because I don't know. I couldn't tell you if there was a purpose or not, but I would be inclined to say that if you're talking about us like from a scientific point of view, we don't really have a purpose. We're just kind of here and we're doing our own thing. I mean, I guess our purpose is to like continue the human race. we'd be a pretty bad species if we didn't want to do that.
Would it be a species?
Exactly.
Evolution.
Evolution. But I mean, on the individual level, I would just say your purpose. I mean, it depends on the person, but ultimately, you probably want to be happy. And whatever you think is going to make you happy, that's going to be your purpose. You know what I'm saying? Like Mother Teresa, she was probably like, helping people makes me happy. That's my purpose. You know, Elon Musk is probably like, you know, helping technology, watching, you know, progressing stuff, going to space. That's going to make me happy if we can go to space. So that's my purpose. That's what I would say. That's probably a pretty shallow answer, but
No, I think that's a genuine response.
Simple answer.
Yeah.
So I've thought about this a lot over the course of my life. Why? Lord knows. I don't believe in a word, but he knows. And I think that, like you said, there's two facets that I would establish it into. There's a scientific aspect, and then there's a more social, cultural aspect to it. So then to start scientifically, and pardon me if this is a rant, I would also advise any of you to chime in with questions or anything. Just so it's not me talking. Scientifically, evolution, we're both taking AP Bio. Humans are the worst thing that have ever happened to this planet. Point blank.
For diversity or what for what
How?
purpose?
For diversity, in terms of biodiversity, the human race, cause mass extinctions.
I don't want to like jump in here,
You should.
but like, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, I would say the meteor that killed dinosaurs probably made more things extinct than we have so far.
That's not even necessarily true.
What?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's. I
That
mean,
can't be real.
We're getting close to that.
we've done quite a bit.
We
Because
Furthermore,
I think that when people think about human extinction, they only think about the recent stuff we've been doing.
Mhm.
But I don't think you've realized that even 100,000 years ago, when humans were just killing like woolly mammoths and stuff, in a book I read, whenever humans conquered a new continent, 90% of the species there went extinct.
have you ever read *Sapiens*?
Yes.
Is
You
that
read
what you're
*Sapiens*?
talking about?
Yeah,
I read,
yeah.
That's why I'm having this. That's why, yeah.
Shit, sorry.
what?
Yeah, no, humans for the entire history of the Homo sapiens species have been causing mass extinctions.
Even before like the last 10,000 years.
You're telling me that like little like monkey dudes in tribes.
Yes.
Well, they weren't
Word.
like
Only developed
hundreds of thousands of years ago. So we're talking,
about 200,000, 300,000 years ago.
yeah, like we're talking not necessarily like monkey,
No, okay.
but like,
They're kind of developed as a Homo
yeah,
sapien,
like
but
they have thumbs.
they don't.
Yeah, yeah.
But they don't have civilization.
They
They're
don't.
just hunter-gatherers.
They're
But
little.
as they begin civilization, that's when
It
it's
gets
the
even
worst.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that makes
Here's the
sense.
thing. You think there's a lot of animals that exist today, right? 90% of them are domesticated.
Mhm.
Of in total, yeah,
And most animals are just living on a farm somewhere in a 2x2 cubicle.
yeah, I believe that.
Which is sad, especially when you think of, because like the meat packing industry,
It's kind of fun.
fish, all of it, right? But humans, scientifically speaking, you want to talk about viruses, right? And what viruses do, they infect your cell and they go into the bacteria or they blow it up, right? Humans are the biggest disease that we've ever seen in the planet. Simply talking extinctions, talking pollution, which is a whole other conversation, right? So naturally, the human species has been a net negative for the world. That's a very pessimistic view. That's the scientific one.
Okay,
I feel very enlightened.
well, I just feel like it can't be like 100% true. Like, sure, it is true, but like I'm pretty sure there was a time like millions and millions of years ago where basically there was like trees, but there was nothing that was eating the trees, and then they would all die, and there was just like a bunch of dead trees, and then something evolved and it started eating the trees or something. So then all like the carbon dioxide that was in those trees got released, and then like caused it. Well, that was one mass extinction.
Well,
So
so
there've been many mass extinctions.
yeah, but I think that's a good point. Evolutionarily speaking, and this is a very scientific conversation.
That caused a lot of pollution.
Yeah, exactly.
Like carbon
Evolutionarily
dioxide.
speaking, the world has a balance, right? There's competition, there's survival of the fittest. This one becomes more fit, so it survives and it creates a new species, right?
Mhm.
And then there's other pressures, right? So all of these different species are working together to evolve each other. But then humans come along and we do our own thing, and all of that is screwed up, and evolution is gone, right? Because like if you think about a megalodon. I used to love sharks when I was a kid. I thought they were awesome. I don't know if that was just me, but sharks evolved to get big into a megalodon. But then those megalodons ate too much food, and then they were like, well, there's not enough food to support my massive shark self. So then they got smaller again, right? But then when humans come along, they're interfering with that natural process, that process that took millions, maybe even a billion years.
Would you argue that we are natural?
Well, are we?
Like,
We're
what, is it
doing
with
this-
divine creation. or-
We're doing the same thing. I mean, we evolved the same way a megalodon did. We're doing the same things.
Well, yeah, that's
Except
megalodons do.
never before has there been a species that is driving as much extinction as humans are.
yeah, but I think his
Yeah.
argument is that even though that's true,
That this is the way it's supposed to happen.
it's just natural. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
Which I
natural.
agree.
Which
but-
then that goes to my second, more optimistic point. And this goes back to a conversation we had before. Culturally, humans are the best thing that have ever happened to this planet because there wouldn't be a culture without humans.
Wouldn't there?
I mean, cows don't sit around and pray to God. I
We
don't
don't.
think.
Well, what's your definition of culture?
Belief, stories.
Because like, ants and bees are interesting. They like dance and shit. I feel like they might have like cultures.
No, I mean,
Not like religions per se.
Well,
but
so then to bring it to our previous conversation, and this is my ultimate response to my question. Our job as human beings are simply to feel things and to be changed by the world we witness and then to change each other because of it. And the reason why I believe that is, and this maybe you could say that this is my coping mechanism, this is my own kind of like religious beliefs of divinity, but the universe without human beings goes entirely unobserved, right? Wolves aren't changed by the fact that Uranus exists or Saturn exists or physics exists. They just live. And dogs don't necessarily have this existential dread that humans carry with them. But humans do. And that's a very unique property. And I think furthermore, with how beautiful everything is in the universe, right? The sun, the Big Bang, atoms, the way photosynthesis and cellular respiration works, math, like through all of these natural occurrences, it is our job as human beings to observe them, to feel them emotionally, and then to adapt them. So that's where you see literature. That's where you see religion. That's where you see movies, which I love. That's where you see relationship conversation. Like this conversation that we're having is a byproduct of our observation and our observance. That's the same word. Of our observation, of our observation and our ability to feel the beauty of the natural world. And I think ultimately our job is to process this world because it would be an extreme disservice to not, because we are the only species, the only thing in this world the only thing in the whole universe as far as we know, the only thing that's ever existed before as far as we know, to be able to observe and be changed by the observance of the natural world.
okay.
I have a question. Have
What?
you read, you want to say something first? Or?
I was just gonna say, I agree that is probably like that's what we do.
Mhm.
I don't know. As humans, that's kind of like what we do. But like, if we're talking about like on a universal scale, what is necessarily the point of doing that? Like, what's the point of observing?
That's a really great point.
Like it's important to us,
That's a good
sure, but like what happens when we go extinct and we have all this literature? What if nothing else evolves to read it? Then what was the point of all of our
but then,
observance?
and all of those beliefs that I have were completely changed one time when I had a conversation with Mr. Sham. And I've always been the kind of person who's very scared of dying. I don't know why. It's just something that kind of I thought about one day and I was like, that's horrifying. So I asked him last year, because he's my honors bio teacher, we're talking about evolution. I was like, how do you grapple with like existential dread? Because I think that's a very real thing that some people like deal with. Probably most people have to deal with at some point in their lives, this idea of I'm going to die, which a few of my quotes were pertaining to that. And he said, sure, the universe is massive and time is so hard to grapple with. And that could mean that nothing matters. However, on the opposite side of that coin, the world is so big, the universe is so big time is so spread out, and you are just a small little snippet. But that means it matters exactly as much as you want it to. And you, as an emotional observing being, as a sentient being, have the ability to dictate how much your 80, 90, 100 years on this planet really matter.
Fair enough.
Interesting. Have you read Homo Deus, which is the second book?
Homo Deus, I haven't read it now.
It's a very anti-human view. Like I think Sapiens is kind of positive book. If you read Homo Deus, you're like,
They suck.
it's like pretty negative.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's pretty dark. But anyways, I think one of the pieces you mentioned was that what Yuval defines as humanism, that in some way humans are more special than other species.
Mhm.
Which I do think in terms of our abilities and our intelligence, like sure. But I will say that I do think that there's no central purpose for humans over any other animal. Like I feel like whatever I think there's some universalities between us and other animals. I think a lot of religions have tried to paint humans as this magical thing,
Mhm.
but I don't know if I necessarily agree with that as a piece, right? I know some religions say that humans are the only one that can free themselves from the world and separate. I think what Hinduism talks about a lot is how we have karmas throughout our life,
Mhm.
and those karmas determine how we're reborn in the next life. Whether we were born as this species or that species. And basically it's a cycle until you reach a point where you've freed yourself from all your karmas and you can then your soul goes on and becomes a part of God or something like that. And you go through the cycle of going through different species. But essentially, since other animals are not conscious, the human is the only one that's able to realize the fact that it has its karmas and salvate itself, basically, right? But I think a lot of the cultures that paint humans as a special thing, I think that I agree with I think no religion has it correct, in my opinion, right? Because there's no way that I don't believe that someone somehow created all these rules, that somehow it all works out that way. Someone has seen that. But there are some certain principles that kind of made sense to me, right? Like the idea that we have a self beyond our mind, that makes sense to me, right? The idea that we can feel and experience things, that makes sense to me. And I think the fact that we have a soul that can be reborn and can maybe be a part of something bigger, some bigger power, I think that makes sense to me as well. But I don't know if I necessarily agree with the idea that we are in any way different from a cow or like a wolf. You know what I mean? And maybe that's just me thinking, but I don't know. I don't see any way how we're different from other species. I don't know. What do you think about that?
You know what I'm curious about? You said like we're the only species that are like sentient, but how do we know that? Because I was looking at a National Geographic book ages ago, and it was like human intelligence versus like dolphin intelligence, and then like dolphins were like smarter than us for a while, and then I was like, we discovered fire and shit and whatever, and then we went up and dolphins like kind of stayed the same. But at what point do you think we became sentient? And if we've always been sentient, perchance, then what's to say other species aren't sentient? Because if you have a dolphin or a chimp, a smart chimp, that's like, you know, I don't know, 50 IQ, 80 IQ. Are you going to tell me the dumbest person on earth who's got like 50 IQ isn't sentient?
Well, I don't think sentience and intelligence are the same thing,
Mhm.
right? Because you can create like a extremely smart robot, but it's not conscious.
Well, how would we define sentience?
I don't
'Cause
know.
think that-
Actually,
Yeah. What, like what, like self-aware or something?
I guess so.
I think the ability to, be aware of your existence.
And from that point,
Sentience.
So, but then
I feel like other species are
yeah,
sentient.
because then what isn't the, I feel like there's a test. I feel like I've heard of this where they like, and crows are also really smart too, by the way.
Yeah.
But like if you can identify yourself in a mirror and you know that it's yourself, then would that make you sentient?
Well, I
Aware of your
don't, my dog
existence?
can't identify herself in the mirror
So your dog
Well,
can't.
how do you know that?
because it doesn't look at it. It barked at it once.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. So they can't.
But if you took like a dolphin.
Do we know that animals can recognize themselves?
I'm pretty sure some can.
By the definition of sentience is the capacity to express feelings and sensations, to have affective consciousness, subjective states that have a positive or negative valiance.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means, but
I'll give you
I know that
Like a
dolphins.
go ChatGPT 10-year-old.
They have the capacity to experience positive and negative feelings.
Well, then that's any animal.
Yeah. And like dolphins, for example, again, National Geographic, pretty sure they have like fashion. Like they'll put
Oh,
like
yeah.
they'll put like seaweed.
They do
on
some
it.
pretty crazy stuff.
Like it's like
Like, you remember
it's
the
like-
video we watched of the birds that like were making like houses
That
and
was
stuff to
wild.
attract a mate? Like that. Have you seen the video?
Yeah, same kind of shit.
I believe in
Same
that.
kind of shit. And that kind of goes back to culture where you said we're like the only ones that have culture. Like birds that make
Yeah,
their
I
own
believe
stuff.
that.
Like I don't know, like traditions. That's part of
Well, so
culture.
yeah, I think we're talking about
That's-
consciousness here. Consciousness
Okay,
is the
consciousness.
ability to
Okay.
think and use reason and logic to solve problems and make sense of the world around us.
Maybe like meaning seeking as well.
I don't think a dog has ever asked itself, why am I alive?
I don't
And
think
you
it
know what?
cares.
Maybe I think.
Well,
one
but
of-
that's a good point.
Yeah.
They don't care. And maybe they're better for it.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, maybe the dog is like the happiest being because it's so.
well, but here's another thing. It's like, here's another thing. Humans, like mental disorders and like depression, a lot of that comes from a hyper consciousness,
Mhm.
right? And this idea that now that feeling of like a fight or flight of, I need to kill this animal to get food, or I need to fight for my family, is now coming into fruition when you have a math test. Like,
Mhm.
like these hyper primitive, what's the word? Like tendencies and our innate being is now, we've over-evolved. So now our instincts aren't being used for the right reason.
Yeah, we're not
Rather, we're sitting there thinking, I'm going to die someday.
we're not
And we're
evolved
sweating.
fast enough for-
One of the things I also thought about was that some people think humans are special because they built these crazy things. They built these big bridges and they design all these cool systems. But I actually remember thinking back to that video we saw in bio class, that seeing that video made me feel that everything we do in this world is driven by one purpose, and that's survival and reproduction. I think because I think something Mr. Her mentioned that got me thinking about that was that, or the video mentioned, is that the bird in these forests have access to so much food, right? That their survival is not in question, right? So the first priority of any being is to survive, right? So that's why most of the animals in the wild are not thinking about what's the meaning of life. They're trying to fucking survive, right? Like they're going out, they're getting their food, they're building their shelter, right? And since the bird was able to have enough food that survival is not a problem, it can shift its attention to reproduction, right? And you could see the bird collecting all these cool gadgets or whatever, like the cool foods and the putting them together, building a nice house, learning these dances, right? But what drove them? They were driven by trying to attract a mate. They were driven by reproduction. And maybe in the same way for humans, we advanced very quickly, right? In the hierarchy. Survival did not become a problem for some time because now we live pretty comfortable lives today, but even in the past, it's likely that you're not going to die because of the environment, which means you have more brain capacity to focus it on reproduction. So I wonder, why do we go and build the bridges? Why do we go and design these cool castles and these governments? Is it driven by our desire to attract a woman? It makes sense, right?
No,
It's like when I
yeah,
saw the
it makes
bird, it
sense.
looked exactly like a human. Like the same way the bird was collecting all the things in the forest and putting in this pile.
Mhm.
It's the same way why we humans collect all the money and the watches and the cars and hold on to it.
Well, I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, but I also think married men do that, you know.
For sure, but maybe they're still driven by it.
But I think
Well,
if you,
married men will still want to impress their wife.
Yeah.
well, but I would say that to your point about like evolutionary fitness being defined by survival and reproduction, I think the reason why humans are different is because that isn't a concern anymore. Like we are living
Oh,
an
yeah, that's
example
another good point.
of what happens when we have become so fit that survival isn't a question and reproduction doesn't matter, because even if you die without leaving behind kids, the human population is still
But I feel like
growing
your internal
exponentially.
body doesn't know that.
Here's my
I feel like
question
a
though.
monkey body doesn't know that.
So you know how Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah.
Obviously, for the most part, we're at the top. And most animals are kind of at the bottom because the bottom is like food and water, and then the next one up is like safety and stuff. So those are kind of like where most animals are at. Like that's probably where your bird's at. It's probably at safety because there's probably still animals trying to eat it. So perhaps where you are on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs dictates your level of like awareness or consciousness or whatever. Because
Well,
like
I agree
if you're
with that.
talking to someone and some like poor starving kid who's just trying to get his next meal, he also doesn't care what the meaning of
Is that true?
Homo sapiens are.
Is that
I
true?
feel like he would. I
Well,
wouldn't
I
care.
guess so, yeah.
no,
wouldn't
yeah,
care,
I
really.
think that's a good point. I think
Yeah.
I would also venture to argue that the reason why humans have become this way is because we don't have an alpha predator coming after us.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? It's like when you're
Yeah.
fighting to not get killed, you're not worried about the fact that inevitably you're going to die.
Yeah.
You're just worrying about delaying that. But now, because naturally our death is delayed. I mean, obviously you could get hit by a bus or get cancer or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like
You don't have to.
stereotypically
Yeah.
speaking, we're not walking around thinking a bird is going to fly down and pick me up.
Yeah. Death
Right.
is the present.
A shark, like a
concern.
shark isn't going to kill me as I'm going about my daily life, which is why I'm like, oh, well, if nothing else is going to kill me, it doesn't matter. It's going to happen anyway. Like, and that's why I think humans are different than animals, because I think the word I would use is leisure. This idea of like, we're not fighting for survival. We're not fighting to reproduce. We are just existing. And that's why we have this culture. That's why we have religion.
That gave me another idea. I wonder if a bird or animal knows it's gonna die. Because what if the bird thinks that, okay, if the predator gets me and eats me, I'm gonna die. But what if they have some internal belief that if I never get eaten by a predator, I'll be fine, right? Because
That-
maybe humans have reached a point where we don't think we're gonna die from some external source, but we found out that we're gonna eventually die from old age.
Well, very rarely,
what I'm thinking.
very rarely
Is that
do
why we're,
animals
like,
die
striving?
of old age.
Is that why we're striving to find meaning? Because we're aware of our death and we can't control it. Maybe animals think they can still control it by running away from it.
That's what I'm, because like if you're on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you're like at the bottom and you're just worried about safety, you're not concerned about when you're gonna die. I mean, you're not concerned about dying in the future.
But
You're
also,
concerned about not dying right
a lot
now.
of animals, when they die from natural causes, it's a painful death,
Mhm.
right? Like when a dog gets cancer, it's in a lot of pain, right?
Is cancer painful?
Sometimes.
Or is it just like
As it
mentally painful?
develops,
Or is it
I
like
think.
physically painful?
I think both.
It depends. Depends on the
I think it
cancer.
depends, but like ultimately it will become painful enough where it's like humans, I think our biggest issue is the fact that we are afraid of the fact that we will die suddenly, or we will die without enough time to like have love, or we won't get to do what we want. But I think animals don't have that worry because they're just so focused on, like I said, and like you said with the needs, like just making it to tomorrow and protecting your eggs and
But-
like stuff like that.
Play devil's advocate on my own point. What about like pets who have everything? Like
That's a good
dog.
point.
Well, but pets have this leisure time,
Yeah.
and
So where are they on the Maslow's
Like a dog.
hierarchy?
Like
But
it's everything.
is
Maybe it's maybe it's evolved over generations.
well, and that's an interesting point. I think, and I think it says this in Sapiens. Another reason why humans are different are because we are one of the only animals that can evolve past our genes generationally. So it's like
Was it?
Yeah,
so the way that you are is nurture based, right? It's largely based on the way that your parents treat you, right? And the way that people around you treat you. We have like 10 minutes left.
Okay.
But when you look at like a dog, I got my dog when it was a puppy from its mother, right? And it never had that chance to be nurtured by a mother dog, but it still acts the way that its mother would. Even though she never met her mother.
The
Right?
genetic, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like genetically that's the way it is. And that's why they can't develop a culture because they don't have the ability to pass along stories through generations or pass along
Well, they can
traditions through generations. Well, but like not necessarily. Like it's
They don't
not
have
like
memory, I guess.
and even when you pull them away, they'll act the same way as the other dog, which to me proves the fact that that previous dog hadn't had the ability to form a culture or form past traditions that you would pass down through generations.
What about like with wolves or something? Like they're like packs. They probably different wolves probably.
Well,
have
but
different,
that's
like,
also a
things.
genetic thing.
But like different wolves in different areas probably have like different like I don't know
Cultures?
like cultures.
Well, that would be convergent
And maybe
evolution.
they howl differently or something.
That's not a culture. I guess I see Connor's point. I just gotta think about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I know it's a very like esoteric conversation.
I like it. That's interesting.
Well, yeah, and I think it's really fascinating to think about the fact like humans, our dominance of the humans' dominance of the planet, is that natural? Is that deserved? Is that scary? Is that optimistic? Like, I think it really forces you to question these things. But I think ultimately the fact that we're able to have these conversations proves the fact that something about humans is different.
Yeah, but why do we need to ask these questions? Why do we need to figure this out?
Because what else are you doing on Wednesday on a two?
could be- I
don't know.
Well, and then I think ultimately, here's a nice little conclusion. With great power comes great responsibility. And as human beings, if we can observe these things, it's our job to have these conversations. And furthermore, to your point, to protect these other animals, right? And to protect the planet, because Now the planet's safer for meteors than it's ever been because of NASA, right?
I'm pretty sure Jupiter's made it pretty safe. 'Cause
No,
they,
but
like, suck up all the asteroids.
sure. But ultimately, this is the safest we've ever been from fear of getting hit by a meteor and all dying
We're in a
because of
pretty-
technology and NASA.
Would you argue that we were safer before because we never had a fear of getting hit by a meteor?
Well,
Well, that's a different thing. That's like suffering.
Like the dinosaurs never knew a meteor was going to come, so they weren't afraid of getting hit by a meteor. That is what you said.
no, yeah,
If we're,
no.
if we're talking about like the wording of your,
But I'm talking about the planet
Wait, he's
itself.
talking about like scientifically.
I know he's talking about
We're
scientific,
talking more like.
but when
mental
you
suffering.
when you put the word fear in there, that that brings up a different question.
You're right, because
that makes
if we got hit by a meteor, we would know 6 months in advance.
That'd be
Yeah.
probably really bad.
Dinosaurs were just going for a walk, and then that was
Yeah.
it.
They maybe saw a bright thing in the sky. and was
But
like,
ultimately, those 6 months would be happier than if we found out 6 months in advance.
100%. Because all the suffering. is up.
especially if we can't do anything about it,
I wonder if
which would be the
we,
worst part, because we know about it, but we can't do anything about it. In which case, it's better to not have known at all, probably. Which is another question.
The illusions.
Would you rather be dumb but happy, or smart but sad? Because when you're dumb but happy, you don't know what's going on.
Dumb but happy, you're
Is your-
living in an illusion.
Yeah, bliss.
I hit you.
Ignorance is bliss.
I like that.
Ignorance is bliss.
Because I used to like think about the existential shit, like what's beyond the universe and shit.
And it's because you thought about it.
But it's like I don't like thinking about it because it makes me
Okay.
sad,
Fair enough.
and it's like whatever. Like it's just
Can't
not.
change
What's the point? I can't control.
Do what you can control. We're connecting everything.
There you
Connecting
go.
everything at the end of the thing. Come back next time for more.
You know what, viewers? Ultimately, we've learned one thing today. Don't think.
Thinking is bad.
Thinking
much
is bad for you.
I wonder
Ignorance
if we
is
had like
bliss.
100 podcasts where we came into one question like, what's the meaning of life? We talked for an hour. Where would we get? I feel like we'd have a.
I think it was
I would say that we would get absolutely no.
I agree. I think
Like,
it was just
I-
us three. We'd just be going in circles.
Because I think by the end, you would realize, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
It doesn't matter. Don't think.
Had some fun. I had some fun today.
It was a quotastic episode.
Fantastic.
We lost the quotes at some point. It's okay.
Wait, I'll end with one more quote. Ready? Shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. Beautiful.
Thank you for watching.
That doesn't really go with the theme.
Don't forget to
Thank
like,
you for watching.
Fantastic.
All right, leave Connor's video up. I gotta do something real quick. I need your seat.
You need my seat.
Unless you want to do the outros.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like that episode, you should go watch this episode with me.
That's why I laughed.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, because the Baruah podcast is the best podcast.